Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of the 83rd Congress, it is a high honor again to present to the Congress my views on the state of the Union and to recommend measures to advance the security, prosperity, and well-being of the American people. All branches of this government, and I venture to say both of our great parties, can support the general objective of the recommendations I make today. For that objective is the building of a stronger America. A nation whose every citizen has good reason for bold hope, where effort is rewarded and prosperity is shared, where freedom expands and peace is secure. That is what I mean by a stronger America. Toward this objective, a real momentum has been developed. We mean to continue that momentum and to increase it. We mean to build a better future for this nation. Much for which we may be thankful has happened during the past year. First of all, we are deeply grateful that our sons no longer die on the distant mountains of Korea. Although they are still called from our homes to military service, they are no longer called to the field of battle. The nation has just completed the most prosperous year in its history. The damaging effect of inflation on the wages, pensions, salaries, and savings of us all has been brought under control. Taxes have begun to go down. The cost of our government has been reduced, and its work proceeds with some 183,000 fewer employees. Thus, the discouraging trend of modern government toward their own limitless expansion has, in our case, been reversed. The cost of armaments becomes less oppressive as we near our defense goals, yet we are militarily stronger every day. During the year, creation of the new Cabinet Department of Health, Education, and Welfare symbolized the government's permanent concern with the human problems of our citizens. Segregation in the armed forces and other federal activities is on the way out. We have also made progress toward its abolition in the District of Columbia. These are steps in the continuing effort to eliminate interracial difficulties. Some developments beyond our shores have been equally encouraging. Communist aggression, halted in Korea, continues to meet in Indochina the vigorous resistance of France under the Associated States, assisted by timely aid from our country. In West Germany, in Iran, and in other areas of the world, heartening political victories have been won by the forces of stability and of freedom. Slowly but surely, the free world gathers strength. Meanwhile, from behind the Iron Curtain, there are signs that tyranny is in trouble, and reminders that its structure is as brittle as its surface is hard. There has been, in fact, a great strategic change in the world during the past year. That precious intangible, the initiative, is becoming ours. Our policy, not limited to mere reaction against crises provoked by others, is free to develop along lines of our choice, not only abroad, but at home. As a major theme for American policy during the coming year, let our joint determination be to hold this initiative and to use it. We shall use this initiative to promote three broad purposes. First, to protect the freedom of our people. Second, to maintain a strong, growing economy. Third, to concern ourselves with the human problems of the individual citizen. Only by real progress toward attainment of these purposes can we be sure that we are on the road to a better and a stronger America. All my recommendations today are in furtherance of these three purposes. Because our position as a sovereign nation in relationship to other sovereign nations overshadows and influences every other problem to which this government falls heir, it is appropriate that I should start my specific discussions with the subject of foreign affairs. American freedom is threatened so long as the world communist conspiracy exists in its present scope, power, and hostility. More closely than ever before, American freedom is interlocked with the freedom of other people. In the unity of the free world lies our best chance to reduce the communist threat without war. In the task of maintaining this unity and strengthening all its parts, the greatest responsibility falls to those who, like ourselves, retain the most freedom and the most strength. We shall therefore continue to advance the cause of freedom on foreign fronts. In the Far East, we retain our vital interest in Korea. We have negotiated with Korea, with the Republic of Korea, a mutual security pact which develops our security system for the Pacific. I shall promptly submit it to the Senate for its consent to ratification. We are prepared to meet any renewal of armed aggression in Korea. We shall maintain indefinitely our bases in Okinawa. I shall ask the Congress to authorize continued material assistance to hasten the successful conclusion of the struggle in Indochina. This assistance will also bring closer the day when the Associated States may enjoy the independence already assured by France. We shall continue military and economic aid to the nationalist government of China. In South Asia, profound changes are taking place in free nations, which are demonstrating their ability to progress through democratic methods. They provide an inspiring contrast to the dictatorial methods and backward course of events in communist China. In these continuing efforts, the free peoples of South Asia can be assured of the support of the United States. In the Middle East, where tensions and serious problems exist, we will show sympathetic and impartial friendship. In Western Europe, our policy rests firmly on the North Atlantic Treaty. It will remain so based as far ahead as we can see. Within its organization, the building of a united European community, including France and Germany, is vital to a free and self-reliant Europe. This will be promoted by the European defense community, which offers assurance of European security. With the coming of unity to Western Europe, the assistance this nation can render for the security of Europe and for the entire free world will be multiplied in effectiveness. In the Western Hemisphere, we shall continue to develop harmonious and mutually beneficial cooperation with our neighbors. Indeed, solid friendship with all our American neighbors is a cornerstone of our entire policy. In the world as a whole, the United Nations, admittedly still in a state of evolution, means much to the United States. It has given uniquely valuable services in many places where violence threatens. It is the only real world forum where we have the opportunity for international presentation and rebuttal. It is a place where the nations of the world can, if they have the will, take collective action for peace and justice. It is a place where the guilt can be squarely assigned to those who fail to take all necessary steps to keep the peace. The United Nations deserves our continued and firm support. Now, in the practical application of our foreign policy, we enter the field of foreign assistance and trade. Military assistance must be continued. Technical assistance must be maintained. Economic assistance can be reduced. However, our economic programs in Korea and in a few other critical places of the world are especially important, and I shall ask Congress to continue support in these particular spots in the next fiscal year. The forthcoming budget message will propose maintenance of the presidential power of transferability of all assistance funds and will ask authority to merge these funds with the regular defense funds. It will also propose that the Secretary of Defense have primary responsibility for the administration of foreign military assistance in accordance with the policy guidance provided by the Secretary of State. The fact that we can now reduce our foreign economic assistance in many areas is gratifying evidence that its objectives are being achieved. By continuing to surpass our pre-war levels of economic activity, Western Europe gains self-reliance. Thus, our relationship enters a new phase, which can bring results beneficial to our taxpayers and our allies alike, if still another step is taken. This step is the creation of a healthier and freer system of trade and payment within the free world, a system in which our allies can earn their own way and our economy can continue to flourish. The free world can no longer afford the kinds of arbitrary restraints on trade that have continued ever since the war. On this problem, I shall submit to the Congress detailed recommendations after our Joint Commission on Foreign Economic Policy has made its report. As we maintain our military strength during the coming year and draw closer the bonds with our allies, we shall be in an improved position to discuss outstanding issues with the Soviet Union. Indeed, we shall be glad to do so whenever there is a reasonable prospect of constructive results. In this spirit, the atomic energy proposal of the United States were recently presented to the United Nations General Assembly. A truly constructive Soviet reaction will make possible a new start toward an era of peace and away from the fatal road toward atomic war. Since our hope for all the world is peace, we owe ourselves and the world a candid explanation of the military measures we are taking to make that peace secure. As we enter this new year, our military power continues to grow. This power is for our own defense and to deter aggression. We shall not be aggressors, but we and our allies have and will maintain a massive capability to strike back. Here are some of the considerations in our defense plan. First, while determined to use atomic power to serve the usages of peace, We take into full account our great and growing number of nuclear weapons and the most effective means of using them against an aggressor if they are needed to preserve our freedom. Our defense, therefore, will be stronger if, under appropriate security safeguards, we share with our allies certain knowledge of the tactical use of our nuclear weapons. I urge the Congress to provide the needed authority. Second, the usefulness of these new weapons creates new relationships between men and materials. These new relationships permit economies in the use of men as we build forces suited to our situation in the world today. As will be seen from the budget message on January 21st, the air power of our Navy and Air Force is receiving heavy emphasis. Third, our armed forces must regain mobility of action. Our strategic reserves must be centrally placed and readily deployable to meet sudden aggression against ourselves and our allies. Fourth, our defense must rest on trained manpower and its most economical and mobile use. A professional corps is the heart of any security organization. It is necessarily the teacher and leader of those who serve temporarily in the discharge of the obligation to help defend the Republic. Pay alone will not retain in the career service of our armed forces the necessary numbers of long-term and able personnel. I strongly urge, therefore, a more generous use of traditional benefits important to service morale. Among these are adequate living quarters and family housing units and medical care for dependents. Studies of military manpower have just been completed by the National Security Training Commission and a committee appointed by the Director of the Office of Defense Mobilization. Evident weaknesses exist in the state of readiness and organization of our reserve forces. Measures to correct these weaknesses will be later submitted to the Congress. Fifth, the ability to convert swiftly from partial to all-out mobilization is imperative to our security. For the first time, mobilization officials know what are the requirements for 1,000 major items needed for military uses. These data, now being reduced to civilian requirements and our supply potential, will show us the gaps in our mobilization base. Thus, we shall have more realistic plant expansion and stockpiling goals. We shall speed their attainment. This nation is at last to have an up-to-date mobilization base, the foundation of a sound defense program. Another part of this foundation is, of course, our continental transport system. Some of our vital heavy materials come increasingly from Canada. Indeed, our relations with Canada, happily always close, involve more and more the unbreakable ties of strategic interdependence. Both nations now need the St. Lawrence Seaway for security, as well as for economic reasons. I urge the Congress promptly to approve our participation in this construction. Sixth, military and non-military measures for continental defense are being strengthened. In the current fiscal year, we are allocating to these purposes an increasing portion of our efforts. And in the next fiscal year, we shall spend nearly $1 billion more for them than in 1953. An indispensable part of our continental security is our civil defense effort. This will succeed only as we have the complete cooperation of state governors, city mayors, and voluntary citizen groups. With their help, we can advance a cooperative program which, if an attack should come, would save many lives and lessen destruction. The defense program recommended in the 1955 budget is consistent with all the considerations that I have just discussed. It is based on a new military program unanimously recommended by the Joint Chiefs of Staff and approved by me following consideration by the National Security Council. This new program will make and keep America strong in an age of peril. Nothing should bar its attainment. See? The international and defense policies which I have outlined will enable us to negotiate from a position of strength as we hold our resolute course toward a peaceful world. We turn now to matters which are more definitely domestic in character. Though well realizing that our situation abroad affects every phase of our daily lives, from the amount of taxes to our very state of mind. Under the standards established by the new Employee Security Program, more than 2,200 employees have been separated from the federal government. Our national security demands that the investigation of new employees and the evaluation of derogatory information respecting present employees be expedited and concluded at the earliest possible date. I shall recommend that the Congress provide additional funds where necessary to speed these important procedures. From the special employment standards of the federal government, I turn now to a matter relating to American citizenship. The subversive character of the Communist Party in the United States has been clearly demonstrated in many ways, including court proceedings. We should recognize by law a fact that is plain to all thoughtful citizens, that we are dealing here with actions akin to treason, that when a citizen, knowing, participates in the communist conspiracy, he no longer holds allegiance to the United States. I recommend that Congress enact legislation to provide that a citizen of the United States who is convicted in the courts of hereafter conspiring to advocate the overthrow of this government by force or violence be treated as having, by such act, renounced his allegiance to the United States and forfeited his United States citizenship. In addition, the Attorney General will soon appear before your committees to present his recommendations for needed additional legal weapons with which to combat subversion in our country and to deal with the question of claimed immunity. I come now to the second great purpose of our government. Along with the protection of freedom, the maintenance of a strong and growing economy. The American economy is one of the wonders of the world. It undergirds our international position, our military security, and the standard of living of every citizen. This administration is determined to keep our economy strong and to keep it growing. At this moment, we are in transition from a wartime to a peacetime economy. I am confident that we can complete this transition without serious interruption in our economic growth. But we shall not leave this vital matter to chance. Economic preparedness is fully as important to the nation as military preparedness. Subsequent special messages and the economic report on January 28th will set forth economic plans of the administration and recommendations for congressional action. These will include flexible credit and debt management policies, tax measures to stimulate consumer and business spending, suitable lending, guaranteeing, insuring, and grant-in-aid activities, strengthened old age and unemployment insurance measures, improved agricultural programs, public work plans laid well in advance, enlarged opportunities for international trade and investment. This enumeration of these subjects only faintly hints at the vast amount of study, coordination, and planning, to say nothing of authorizing legislation that altogether will make our economic preparedness complete. If new conditions arise that require additional administrative or emergency legislative action, the administration will still be ready. A government always ready to take well-timed and vigorous action, and a business community willing, as ours is, to plan boldly and with confidence, can between them develop a climate assuring steady economic growth. And now, the budget. I shall submit to the Congress on January 21st the first budget prepared by this administration. It will be for the period July 1, 1954 through June 1955. This budget is adequate to the current needs of the government. It recognizes that a federal budget should be a stabilizing factor in the economy. Its tax and expenditure programs will foster individual initiative and economic growth. Pending the transmittal of my budget message, I shall mention here only a few points about our budgetary situation. First, one of our initial acts last winter was to revise, with the cooperation of the Congress, the budget prepared before this administration took office. Requests for new appropriations were greatly reduced. In addition, the spending level provided in that budget for the current fiscal year has been reduced by about $7 billion. In the next fiscal year, we estimate a further reduction in expenditures of more than $5 billion. This will reduce the spending level over the two fiscal years by more than $12 billion. We are also reducing further our request for new appropriations. Second, despite the substantial loss of revenue in the coming fiscal year resulting from tax reductions now in effect and tax adjustments, which I shall propose, our reduced spending will move the new budget closer to a balance. Third, by keeping new appropriation requests below estimated revenues, we continue to reduce the tremendous accumulation of unfinanced obligations incurred by the government under past appropriations. Fourth, until these standing claims on our government's revenues are further reduced, the growth in the public debt cannot be entirely stopped. Because of this, because the government's bills have to be paid every month, while the tax money to pay them comes in with great unevenness within the fiscal year, and because of the need for flexibility to manage our enormous debt, I find it necessary to renew my request for an increase in the statutory debt limit. The new budget provides for a lower level of taxation than has prevailed in preceding years. 6 days ago, individual income taxes were reduced, and the excess profits tax expired. These tax reductions are justified only because of the substantial reductions we have made and are making in governmental expenditures. As additional reductions in expenditures are brought gradually but surely into sight, further reductions in taxes can and will be made. When budget savings and sound governmental financing are assured, tax burdens should be reduced so that taxpayers may spend their own money in their own way. While we are moving toward lower levels of taxation, we must thoroughly revise our whole tax system. The groundwork for this revision has already been laid by the Committee on Ways and Means of the House of Representatives in close consultation with the Department of the Treasury. We should now remove the more glaring tax inequities, particularly on small taxpayers, reduce restraints on the growth of small business, and make other changes that will encourage initiative, enterprise, and production. 25 recommendations toward these ends will be contained in my budget message. Without attempting to summarize these manifold reforms, I can here illustrate their tendencies. For example, we propose more liberal tax treatment for dependent children who work, for widows or widowers with dependent children, and for medical expenses. For the business that wants to expand or modernize its plant, we propose liberalized tax treatment of depreciation, research and development expenses, and retained earnings. Because of the present need for revenue, the corporation income tax should be kept at the current rate of 52% for another year. The excise taxes scheduled to be reduced on April 1st, including those on liquor, tobacco, gasoline, and automobiles, should be continued at existing rates. Immediate extension of the Renegotiation Act of 1951 is also needed to eliminate excessive profits and to prevent waste of public funds in the purchase of defense materials. Agriculture. The well-being of our 160 million people demand a stable and prosperous agriculture. Conversely, every farmer knows he cannot prosper unless all America prospers. As we seek to promote increases in our nation's standard of living, we must be sure that the farmer fairly shares in that increase. Therefore, a farm program promoting stability and prosperity in all elements of our agriculture is urgently needed. Agricultural laws now in effect successfully accomplish their wartime purpose of encouraging maximum production in many crops. Today, production of these crops at such levels far exceeds present demand. Yet the law encouraging such production are still in effect. The storage facilities of the Commodity Credit Corporation bulge with surplus stocks of dairy products, wheat, cotton, corn, and certain vegetable oils. And the corporation's presently authorized borrowing authority, $6,750,000,000, is nearly exhausted. Some products priced out of domestic markets and others priced out of world markets have piled up in government hands. In a world in which millions of people are hungry, destruction of food would be unconscionable. Yet, surplus stocks continue to threaten the markets, and in spite of the acreage control authorized by present law, surpluses will continue to accumulate. We confront two alternatives. The first is to impose still greater acreage reductions for some crops and apply rigid federal controls over the use of the diverted acres. This will regiment the production of every basic agricultural crop. It will place every producer of those crops under the domination and control of the federal government in Washington. This alternative is contrary to the fundamental interests not only of the farmers, but of the nation as a whole. Neither is it a real solution to the problem facing us. The second alternative is to permit the market price for these agricultural products gradually to have a greater influence on the planning of production by farmers, while continuing the assistance of the government. This is the sound approach. To make it effective, surpluses existing when the new program begins must be insulated from the normal channels of trade and devoted to special uses. These uses would include school lunch programs, disaster relief, emergency assistance to foreign friends, and of particular importance, the stockpiling of reserves for a national emergency. Building on the agricultural laws of 1948 and 1949, we should establish a price support program with enough flexibility to attract the production of needed supplies and to stimulate the consumption of those commodities that are plentiful in American markets. Transition to modernized parity must be accomplished only gradually. In no case should there be an abrupt downward change in the dollar level or in the percentage level of price support. Next Monday, I shall transmit to the Congress my detailed recommendations embodying this approach. They have been developed through the cooperation of innumerable individuals vitally interested in agriculture. My special message on Monday will briefly describe the consultative and advisory processes to which this whole program has been subjected during the past 10 months. I have chosen this farm program because it will build markets, protect the consumer's food supply, and move food into consumption instead of into storage. It is a program that will remove the threat to the farmer of these overhanging surpluses, a program also that will stimulate production when a commodity is scarce and encourage consumption when nature is bountiful. Moreover, it will promote the individual freedom, responsibilities, and initiative which distinguish American agriculture. And by helping our agriculture achieve full parity in the market, it promises our farmers a higher and steadier financial return over the years than any alternative plan. Part of our nation's precious heritage is its natural resources. It is the common responsibility of federal, state, and local governments to improve and develop them, always working in the closest harmony and partnership. All federal conservation and resource development projects are being reappraised. Sound projects now underway will be continued. New projects in which the federal government has a part must be economically sound with local sharing of costs wherever appropriate and feasible. In the next fiscal year, work will be started on 23 projects that meet these standards. The federal government will continue to construct and operate economically sound flood control, power, irrigation, and water supply projects wherever these projects are beyond the capacity of local initiative, public or private. Our conservation program will also take into account the important role played by farmers in protecting our soil resources. I recommend enactment of legislation to strengthen agricultural conservation and upstream flood prevention work, and to achieve a better balance with major flood control structures in the downstream areas. Recommendations will be submitted to you from time to time for the adoption of a uniform and consistent water resources policy, a revised public land policy, and a sound program for safeguarding the domestic production of critical and strategic metals and minerals. In addition, we shall continue to protect and improve our national forests, parks, monuments, and other natural and historic sites, as well as our fishery and wildlife resources. I hope that pending legislation to improve the conservation and management of publicly owned grazing lands in national forests will soon be approved by the Congress. To protect the vital interests of every citizen in a safe and adequate highway system, the federal government is continuing its central role in the federal highway program. So that maximum progress can be made to overcome present inadequacies in the interstate highway system, we must continue the federal gasoline tax at 2 cents per gallon. This will require cancellation of the 1/2 cent decrease, which otherwise will become effective April 1st, and will maintain revenues so that an expanded highway program can be undertaken. When the Commission on Intergovernmental Relations completes its study of the present system of financing highway construction, I shall promptly submit its report for consideration by the Congress and the governors of the states. It is apparent that the substantial savings already made and to be made by the Post Office Department cannot eliminate the postal deficit. I recommend, therefore, that the Congress approve the bill now pending in the House of Representatives, providing for the adjustment of certain postal rates. To handle the long-term aspects of this, I also recommend that the Congress create a permanent commission to establish fair and reasonable postal rates from time to time in the future. Now, along with the protection of freedom and maintenance of a strong and growing economy, this administration recognizes a third great purpose of government: concern for the human problems of our citizens. In a modern industrial society, banishment of destitution and cushioning the shock of personal disaster on the individual are proper concerns of all levels of government, including the federal government. This is especially true where remedy and prevention alike are beyond the individual's capacity. Of the many problems in this area, those I shall first discuss are of particular concern to the members of our great labor force, who with their hands, hearts, and heads produce much of the wealth of our country. Protection against the hazards of temporary unemployment should be extended to some 6.5 million of workers, including civilian federal workers who now lack this safeguard. Moreover, the Secretary of Labor is making available to the states studies and recommendations in the fields of weekly benefits, periods of protection, and extension of coverage. The economic report will consider the related matter of minimum wages and their coverage. The Labor Management Relations Act of 1947 is basically a sound law. However, 6 years of experience have revealed that in some respects it can be improved. On January 11, I shall forward to the Congress suggestions for changes designed to reinforce the objectives of the Act. Our basic Social Security program, the Old Age and Survivors Insurance System, to which the individuals contribute during their productive years and receive benefits based on previous earnings, is designed to shield them from destitution. Last year, I recommended extension of the Social Security insurance system to include more than 10 million additional persons. I ask that this extension soon be accomplished. This and other major improvements in the insurance system will bring substantial benefit increases and broaden the membership of the insurance system, thus diminishing the need for federal grants in aid for such purposes. A new formula will therefore be proposed, permitting progressive reduction in such grants as the need for them declines. Federal grant-in-aid welfare programs, now based on widely varying formulas, should be simplified. Concrete proposal on 14 of them will be suggested to the appropriate committees. The program for rehabilitation of the disabled especially needs strengthening. Through special vocational training, this program presently returns each year some 60,000 handicapped individuals to productive work. Far more disabled people can be saved each year from idleness and dependence if this program is gradually increased. My more detailed recommendations on this and the other social insurance problems I have mentioned will be sent to the Congress on January 14th. I am flatly opposed to the socialization of medicine. The great need for hospital and medical services can best be met by the initiative of private plans. But it is unfortunately a fact that medical costs are rising and already impose severe hardships on many families. The federal government can do many helpful things and still avoid the socialization of medicine. The federal government should encourage medical research in its battle with such mortal diseases as cancer and heart ailments, and should continue to help the states in their health and rehabilitation programs. The present Hospital Survey and Construction Act should be broadened in order to assist in the development of adequate facilities for the chronically ill. Moreover, We should encourage the construction of diagnostic centers, rehabilitation facilities, and nursing homes. The war on disease also needs a better working relationship between government and private initiatives. Private and non-profit hospital and medical insurance plans are already in the field, soundly based on the experience and the initiative of the people in their various communities. A limited government reinsurance service would permit the private and non-profit insurance companies to offer broader protection to more of the many families which want and should have it. On January 18th, I shall forward to the Congress a special message presenting this administration's health program in detail. Youth, our greatest resource, is being seriously neglected in a vital respect. The nation as a whole is not preparing teachers or building schools fast enough to keep up with the increase in our population. The preparation of teachers, as indeed the control and direction of public education policy, is a state and local responsibility. However, the federal government should stand ready to assist states which demonstrably cannot provide sufficient school buildings. In order to appraise the needs, I hope that this year a conference on education will be held in each state, culminating in a national conference. From these conferences on education, every level of government, from the federal government to each local school board, should gain the information from which to attack this serious problem. The details of a program to enlarge and improve the opportunities for our people to acquire good homes will be presented to the Congress by special message on January 25th. This program will include modernization of the home mortgage insurance program of the federal government, redirection of the present system of loans and grants in aid to cities for slum clearance and redevelopment, the extension of the advantages of insured lending to private credit engaged in this task of rehabilitating obsolete neighborhoods, insurance of long-term mortgage loans with small down payments for low-income families, and until alternative programs prove more effective, continuation of the public housing program adopted in the Housing Act of 1949. If the individual, the community, the state, and federal government will alike apply themselves to the purpose, every American family can have a decent home. And no good American family should honestly have to be ashamed of its home. Veterans Administration. The internal reorganization of the Veterans Administration is proceeding with my full approval. When completed, it will afford a single agency whose services, including medical facilities, will be better adapted to the needs of those 20 million veterans to whom this nation owes so much. Now, my few remaining recommendations all relate to a basic right of our citizens, that of being represented in the decisions of the government. I hope that the states will cooperate with the Congress in adopting uniform standards in their voting laws that will make it possible for our citizens in the armed forces overseas to vote. In the District of Columbia, the time is long overdue for granting national suffrage to its citizens, and also applying the principle of local self-government to the nation's capital. I urge the Congress to move promptly in this direction and also to revise district revenue measures to provide needed public works improvements. The people of Hawaii are ready for statehood. I renew my request for this legislation in order that Hawaii may elect its state officials and its representatives in Washington along with the rest of the country this fall. For years, our citizens between the ages of 18 and 21 have, in time of peril, been summoned to fight for America. They should participate in the political process that produces this fateful summons. I urge the Congress to propose to the states a constitutional amendment permitting citizens to vote when they reach the age of 18. I want to add a final word about the general purport of these many recommendations, which are not, in any sense, exclusive. Others will, from time to time, be submitted to the Congress. Our government's powers are wisely limited by the Constitution. But quite apart from these limitations, there are things which no government can do or should try to do. A government can strive, as ours is striving, to maintain an economic system whose doors are open to enterprise and ambition, those personal qualities on which economic growth largely depends. But enterprise and ambition are qualities which no government can supply. Fortunately, no American government need concern itself on this score. Our people have these qualities in good measure. A government can sincerely strive for peace, as ours is striving, and ask its people to make sacrifices for the sake of peace. But no government can place peace in the hearts of foreign rulers. So it is our duty to ourselves and to freedom itself to remain strong in all those ways, spiritual, economic, military, that will give us maximum safety against the possibility of aggressive action by others. No government can inoculate its people against the fatal materialism that plagues our age. Happily, our people, though blessed with more material goods than any people in history, have always reserved their first allegiance to the kingdom of the Spirit, which is the true source of that freedom we value above all material things. But, ladies and gentlemen of the Congress, a government can try, as ours tries, to sense the deepest aspirations of the people and to express them in political action at home and abroad. So long as actions and aspirations, humbly and earnestly, seek favor in the sight of the Almighty, there is no end to America's forward road. There is no obstacle on it she will not surmount in her march toward a lasting peace in a free and prosperous world. I thank you for the very great honor of yours.